Today's guest is Giraud of Damon, which is a motorcycle company building the future of motorcycles. Now, what does that mean? Well, as we know, motorcycles come in all shapes and sizes. However, they are fundamentally still gas driven. This is an electric motorcycle. Many have attempted this feat, and yet very few have accomplished what they set out to do. What makes Damon different is not only the leadership of Jay at the helm, who has had two other electric companies that he had started, electric automotive companies, and underwent all the trials and tribulations with those companies already, while also securing government contracts of the highest level. Then you add to the fact that before he even did any of that, he had a career in extreme sports as a snowboarder. And you're looking at a vision coming together of someone who is now at the helm of what we know as Damon, which is building the future of motorcycles. Does that sentence land a little differently now? This is truly one of those conversations you're going to wish you had heard if you're in entrepreneurship, if you're in tech, and if you're into motorcycles. So without further ado, Jay Giraud of Damon. I want to thank you for stopping by. And I was just wondering if you could just backtrack a little for in the event that anyone's listening to you and about you for the first time, if you can just give a primer for, sort of a little bit of your background and what you're doing with Damon Motors, just like how you got there today before we jump into the deeper next levels and next steps for Damon.
Yeah, so my name is Jay Giraud and I'm the founder and CEO at Damon Motors. And Damon is the future of motorcycling. And there have been a number of companies over the recent decade or so that have started up creating, a new kind of motorcycle, whether that's electric being the new kind part of it, or scooter sharing companies and e-bikes and all of these new bend-angled ways of getting around on less than four wheels. You've probably seen those crazy guys that do 60 miles an hour on unicycles. Okay, none of that is us. We are, I hate saying it this way, but if you aren't looking up Damon Motors on the internet right now, we're like the Ducati of electric motorcycles. Except our bikes are more powerful and faster than Ducatis. And then the top of the line Ducati for that matter. In fact, they not only are they faster and more powerful, but they go twice as far per charge. They can DC fast charge on Tesla superchargers in 20 minutes. They have the world's only collision warning system capable of warning you a threat from all sides in a very novel way. And they transform at the push of a button from a sport bike riding position into a commuter riding position electronically while in motion. So it really is like, and then it's got a 7-inch touchscreen display, shows you everything behind you while you ride. You can unlock the forward camera to stream to the cloud. There's just a whole bunch of cool things that take you well beyond what any motorcycle does today. And so for us, that is sort of what the future of motorcycling is and what it means, redefining a whole new riding experience for commuters and recreational riders.
I mean, this is just such a great opportunity for anyone who has been clamoring at other companies to step up to this. Was this always the vision for Damon, or to make this product in particular, or what was the story like there, especially when you came in?
So I've done a series of automotive startups that we'll talk about in a bit, I guess. But Damon was founded, the genesis for Damon was a time I spent in Jakarta, Indonesia, which is a city of, the outskirts inclusive. It's like 30 million people or something. And literally 19 out of 20 people ride a scooter or a motorbike to get from A to B. And I was there for my best friend's wedding. And I was really excited to ride a motorbike finally among nothing but motorcyclists, because I've been riding my whole life, knowing that they ride small motorbikes, not like the kind of things we ride here, but still just wanting to be among so many riders who live and breathe it. And it was anything but, well, it was kind of fun still, but it was pretty crazy, the absence of rules on the road. And eventually I had a little accident. I was okay. And then later that night, after 7 hours of riding, I nearly drowned in the ocean. I got pulled up by a riptide, and my best friend, the day after his wedding, had to swim out and dig me out. And thankfully, he's a surfer and a lifeguard, so he saved me. So that was good. But for the next few days of my trip there, I spent a lot of time thinking about the needs and the well-being of the average Indonesian person, seeing, them in an entirely new way than merely being, a low middle class developing nation type of people, which is definitely, unfortunately, how people over here tend to think about people over there, and thinking that they're reckless and crazy for putting their family of 5 on a scooter. First of all, that rarely happens, except in small villages. And second of all, when they do it, it's because they have to. There's no alternative. It's the same reason when they buy a motorcycle or a scooter that's quote unquote unsafe with no safety systems that you would find in a car. It's because they have to, because there's no alternative. They don't ride a bicycle and they don't walk on the sidewalks because they're crowded with motorcycles, literally on the sidewalks, because it's so crowded. So, I had a bit of an attitude adjustment, you could say. And I spent the rest of the time thinking about how interestingly all of these motorcycle riders move like a flock of birds. And I thought, what if there was a way to use technology to make all of the motorcycles govern such that they moved like a flock of birds and never crashed into each other? And of course, I had to work my way all the way back to reality, that maybe that's a distant 50-year away future, and thought, like, okay, how do we actually just make motorcycles safer? And so that was kind of the beginning of the thought.
There's actually an origin story. Sometimes people create a business.
There always is an origin story.
Yeah. Well, for good entrepreneurs. So if there's one thing I've noticed is there is a difference. There are some people who just go, how do we make money? And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? And I have interviewed enough companies to know that they were just all about the Benjamins, if you will, right? Which, again, you need that to run a sustainable business, right? You need to have your eye on the bottom line. You can't ignore that. Any entrepreneur would agree with you there. What I find awesome, though, is that you, as any good entrepreneur does, right, takes what life sent your way and then does this alchemical process of then creating something from it. And I think those are usually the best companies. And as you can see, there's something brewing here. There was a direct correlation to the world itself and what you wanted to do with that, right, as a company. And so now you mentioned you had been working at many automotive companies or in that space in general, in that vertical. How did you get into this space to begin with? Like, where does that love start for you? Have you always just been fascinated by cars growing up with Hot Wheels, things of that nature?
Oh boy, it's such a big question. Trying to decide where to cut off and begin. So in 2003, I was unknowingly at the end of my snowboarding career in 2003, living in Whistler, BC. And I was working at a bar and I was doing a day shift because I had just literally destroyed my back about 2 weeks before. And so I was doing a day shift, which was unusual for me. And on that day shift, I was watching the bombing of Baghdad during the Iraq War. And it was, CNN was all over the screens before the bar opened, and we were setting up the bar. And I was just so blown away that was happening in front of my eyes. I was like 26 at the time. And so I spent bunch of time then, and I had a lot of time because I wasn't going up the mountain anymore, thinking about how do you get the world off oil? Because my conclusion was, no matter what anybody says, it was about oil. And, chasing down Saddam Hussein and all that stuff back then. And right or wrong, whatever. And so by 2008, I concluded that I was going to that my mission in life was to help get the world off oil. So I spent 5 years between 2003 and 2008 trying to figure out, what are the biggest leverage points one could have on the world's consumption of oil. And I'm always convinced it's never a technology question. The answer isn't technology. The answer is changing human behavior. And so if you're going to change human behavior, you're going to have to change as many people as possible. So what's the one thing people use that consumes more oil per person than anything else? The answer is a car. Yeah. It's pretty clear. It's a car. Okay, so that means we have to figure out a better fuel source for cars. So I looked at all of the myriad spectrums of fuel sources, and I came to the conclusion that electric was the way of the future in 2007. And in 2008, I started an electric vehicle company making SUVs and pickup trucks that were electric. And we sold them to US utility companies and municipalities and the DOD and the Pentagon. And we had big military contractors like Honeywell Aerospace and SAIC. And it was great fun. It was extremely hard. And 5 years later, we had to pivot because natural gas prices fell so hard that our fleet customers, which was our target audience, pivoted away from electric in '08 and back towards natural gas, or pardon me, in 2012. In 2012, natural gas got so cheap that they wanted to go back to natural gas fleet conversions instead of our electric vehicle fleet conversions. So I had to pivot the company, and I created a second company called Mogio based on an idea I had inside of Rev. And Mogio became one of the largest connected car platforms for consumers in the world. And so today, I ran Mogio for 5 years, and we amassed major world-class partners like all of the wireless carriers in North America and Europe, connected millions of cars. It's a great company, still running today. And that led me all the way to 2016.
What's crazy about that is it sounded, and correct me if I'm wrong, like you did such a great job getting people where you wanted to that it created macro difficulties in the industry
Not
itself.
exactly.
And we're to the point where people were like, "Oh, it's kind of gas is getting too cheap," or what have you. And so
it definitely wasn't me that made natural gas cheap.
Okay,
I don't know what caused it to get cheap, but it fell really.
It just happened. It just happened to happen at the same time. Got it. Oh man, that must have been difficult to experience, especially when your mission was to make that happen, but you didn't want to destabilize anything. That's never been your mission.
Well, I mean, natural gas and oil are separate, technically speaking, but
you can hear my ignorance speaking about this industry. And here's the thing, right? Like, I may not be the only one. I mean, I'd like to feel better about myself thinking that, but there's also the possibility that there are many people who are seeing that. And then you have now, from what I understand, there have always been the group of people, visionaries, early adopters, and people who are innovators in spaces that have always appreciated newer technologies, right? And supported newer technologies and bringing them in. And so when we talk about Damon itself and what it stands for and what it's trying to accomplish with your mission on that fateful day when you were looking at what was happening, right? How has the response been from that community of what Damon has been doing as a production?
So I'll backfill a little piece there before we answer that question. So in 2016, after Rev, after Mogio, there I was in Jakarta and all of that. Had the little accident, thought about flocks of birds, and then thought about how do we make a motorcycle safer today? And the conclusion we came to as a pre-viable answer was to make helmets safer and smarter with heads-up display information. Long story short, that's a bad idea. Very difficult to do that in a way that makes the helmet, that keeps the integrity of the helmet as is, light, safe, and reliable in terms of that system, and that the collision warning system needed to exist on the motorbike itself. So we spent 3 years trying to figure out how to integrate, radars, cameras, lidars, processing units, interfaces to the rider, that are highly reliable, 100% reliable. The interface to the rider has to be unintrusive and undistracting to the rider. If you're going to deliver a collision warning to a motorcyclist, the last thing you want to do is increase the distraction. And so all of that, after many iterations, we found how well they worked on our prototype motorbikes that we were grafting this system onto. We realized that really the only way forward was you're going to have to build the whole motorbike. Because the system was the components and the weight and the cost was large enough and invasive enough that you couldn't just add it on to an existing motorbike and have a reliable collision warning system. And so that was like a real, face the truth music. Am I really doing this again? Am I really going to start another electric vehicle company? And we know how that went. And then if you're going to start an electric vehicle company, I'm not going to do it wrong this time, the way I did with Rev. And so at this point, it's 2018, 2019 or something. And we now have time in our rearview mirror. Tesla's obviously super successful by 2019. And what did they do right? Well, they did something that 200 electric car brands did not do right before Tesla. There were 200 different types of electric cars in the last 20 years before Tesla started. And none of them exist today. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Nobody actually wants an electric car. Absolutely no one says, I have to have my car electric. What they care about is that the car's better than whatever they have in the driveway, because nobody's trading down to save the world. Nobody. Well, there's a few, but it's such a small number, you can't build a car company on that. So really, forget about making an electric car, make a better car. And that's what Tesla did that no others did. They made it go farther, faster, better acceleration, safer, sexier, whatever matters to you, whatever boxes you need to check. Tesla's more or less got it, which is why they now have the best selling car in the world. And so all the electric motorcycle companies before Damon are making the same mistake. They're making a bike that's inferior to any of the 9 motorcycles in my garage. All 9 motorbikes I have in my garage are gas. And I'm an electric car guy since 2008, but I won't buy an electric motorbike because they suck. So, that's in the motorcycle world, that's an even higher bar to achieve than in the car world, because you have 95% less mass that needs to have 3 times the power. Our motorcycle has 3 times the power per pound of weight than a Tesla 3 performance. That's the bar. And that's the bar of a gas motorcycle. A top of the line gas motorbike has that kind of performance. And so that kind of energy density and power density and lightweightness and sex appeal and safety systems and all of that has never been delivered in a motorcycle before. But if you can do that, then you're going to define the future. People are going to go towards that vehicle because it's better than what they own, no matter what it is that they own. And that's what we want. We want everybody to trade up from a medium performance bike or a high performance bike or a low performance bike to whatever's better and cleaning the environment and safer at the same time. So that's kind of how we got to that place. So the base of customers, we have like 15,000 people waiting for a test ride, and we have almost 3,500 orders for the bike. Is created like this groundswell evangelism amongst motorcyclists that it's never been done before. No one's seen that many orders for a product that has yet to be realized into the world.
And what's cool is that your extensive experience in this vertical has primed you for this. The types of contracts that you've led and delivered upon. This is starting to make sense as the story unfolds and how you got to where you are now. And I'm not surprised that there's support for this, because I do know that, again, and I think I mentioned this earlier, a lot of people had been clamoring, leading companies like Tesla's and what have you. Hey, are you ever going to make something like this? And no one wanted to touch it. They were like, nah. But you saw that. Not only are you an enthusiast yourself, but you also know exactly how to solve this problem. And I'm glad that it wasn't one of those, hey, look, there's a place and a time for having a moral high ground, but that doesn't create a sustainable business. Often it doesn't. Right? And you might as well start a nonprofit. And even then, in order to actually solve a problem, it can't generally it can't be a nonprofit, because then there's a lot of things that you get limited by, as opposed to going private, right? When you go private, you can actually do a lot of things, or there's an alternative to that. And I'm curious, what does that look like as the future of this product comes along? Are you going to go public and things of that nature? Did my notes sort of have something like that laying around there?
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, when you take on investors, and we've got, I don't know, a couple hundred of them, I can talk a lot about this subject. Maybe this isn't the right podcast for it, but it's one thing to start your own business. It's another thing to start your own business with somebody else's money. It is such a line of demarcation, if you will. And when you do take other people's money, even if it's one person's money besides your own, you are making such an important commitment to them. I really can't stress it enough, how much it matters that you take that as, frankly, your number one customer is your shareholder. Your customers, your product customers, serve the shareholder at the end of the day. And your obligation to them is extraordinary. A lot of people start businesses with friends and family money. Oh my God, can that ever cause? It hasn't for me, thankfully. I have taken family money, but it can cause a pretty amazing amount of change in the family dynamic if you're taking friends and family money. When you take a lot of shareholder money, you have a whole new kind of obligation to one day create a liquidity event, return on investment. It doesn't always work out. Probably vast majority of the time, it doesn't work out. You are always asked, what's the way you're going to create liquidity for your shareholders? Are you going to get bought? Are you going to go public? I've been pretty adamant from day one, we're not going to be bought. There have been far too many companies in the auto industry whose technologies or products get shelved after they get bought from a major OEM. They get integrated, or they have the good intention of integrating that whiz-bang technology into that line of Ford cars or whatever brand it is. I'm just picking Ford, not picking on Ford. And those good intentions and these automotive companies are massive machines. Very difficult to actually buy something and then actually integrate it into their their product line in any reasonable time frame. And by then the world has changed and the product needs to change and all that. So, I've been pretty adamant that our liquidity event is a go public transaction. Actually, 3 days ago, we announced that we're going to be going public on the NASDAQ. And as much as it's super important to the shareholders, there's actually another dynamic. There are a lot of people who missed out on owning Tesla and who, wish that money they spent on a Tesla car, maybe they spent on Tesla stock instead in 2012, because they would have had a 4,000x return. If you had bought at the beginning and you were selling in the last 12 months, your return is upwards of 4,000x in Tesla, which is pretty nutty, obviously. And I don't expect we're going to be worth $1 trillion. But I think we're going to be worth a hell of a lot. And so we're going public. The other thing that's pretty darn important about going public on the NASDAQ is the future shareholders. And there's as much excitement from the motorcycle community to own our product as there is for them to own our stock. And not just because of that Tesla analogy that I drew, but because motorcyclists are a pretty special breed of people. Like, I've been in the snowboard industry, which is pretty evangelistic. It's quite a religion, distinct from skiing or surfing, which draws its roots from, and distinct from golf, obviously, and lots of things. But the kind of evangelism and religiousness that exists among motorcyclists is on a whole other level. It doesn't exist at all in cars, except for in little niche pockets of, Ferrari lovers that go on Ferrari drives on the weekend. Motorcycling is its own religion in a whole other way. And it's inclusive of dirt biking and touring and the Hell's Angel kind of cruising look and feel and all of that. We all have the same thing in common, no matter what kind of niche of riding we do. And so they've all dreamed about, everybody. I don't know anybody who rides a motorbike who didn't dream of owning their own motorcycle company in one way, shape, or form. And that's why there have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of motorcycle startups over the last 100 years. Few have made it, probably the same average of all startups. But there have been so many that have come and gone. And so the opportunity to own a piece of something that represents the future for them, because everybody wants to know where the future of motorcycling is going, while simultaneously kind of scratching that itch without having to build the whole company yourself. And most people don't have the means or the ability to do that. I think is going to be really special for us. I think our stock is going to be as popular, or more so, at least, even than our product itself.
Yeah, I think there's a definite need. And, I used to work. So years ago, I'm talking years ago, when I was like 18, 17, something like that, I had actually landed a job as a security guard at a movie studio. And one of the people that was running the whole shift, this is a long time ago, ran a bike. And his name was Reyes, right? And that's just who he was. And he always had his fit on. And he would show me on the weekend just like how much love there is between the community themselves, how they share notes, trade notes. And, when people are interacting with each other on that level about products and about a vertical, that's a market if you ever saw one,
Totally.
right? That is a true market, not even market segment. That is just a market. So to know that you're going to be creating the technologies that are leading the way at Damon for a community like that, there's so much to that. And especially and this is why I was so glad we went into your background early on in this conversation, because it really exhibits like who's at the helm of this, right? Who's at the helm of leading this charge, and what victories do they lay claim to be able to substantiate their vision, right? You've worked with big contracts. You've seen the rise and fall of a product that you've developed. And if there's anything I've learned from over 2,000 interviews I've done, is entrepreneurs have respect for someone who has attempted something and it didn't go exactly the way they intended to begin with, because now you're wiser for that, right?
It never goes the way you intended.
Right. And you're wiser for that. And people understand, okay, this is not a test. This is not a joke. You know exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and you understand the inherent risks, which makes you a better steward of people's money. And so for me, that's why I'm really excited about the entire. If you look at the entire idea of the company, the leadership, and the overall mission, it starts to coalesce into something that really does look exciting. And so for me, I've got to know, like, when do you have any? Can you share any? I know that can be a very difficult line to tread. Can you share any details about when people can get involved in, buying stock and things of that nature and get all that?
Actually, legally speaking, we can't.
Understood.
Yeah,
I love that. I love
the
that.
SEC has a pretty hard line about that. So no,
Yeah.
we can't share anything about the future at this time. We're in what's called a quiet period. So, but you can, look up our announcements on the internet.
I was going to say.
Our plans to join the Nasdaq, which are out there now in the public sphere. And yeah, no, that's going to be a really exciting thing for us. I mean, it doesn't take forever. So anybody who follows how companies go public understand the timelines are pretty short, and should be really exciting. The motorcyclist out there, they can now not just put their money into the product they believe in, but they can put their money into the company that they believe in. And not everybody's going to believe in Damon. We definitely have lots of riders out there who think that motorcycles should still have gears and still make lots of noise, and ours does actually make a pretty fair amount of noise. But there's the purists, and I'm with the purists. Like, I got 9 motorbikes and I'm not selling one of them. I'm still going to take my Aprilia to the racetrack on weekends, but I'm also going to ride an electric one. And so you can have both. And a lot of motorcyclists own more than one bike. That's how fanatical we get. And serving that group of people is going to be the most exciting thing in the world, because they're just awesome. Like you said, we get up on our bikes and we go for a ride on after work, and we meet up at the church, and there's like 400 riders there, and everybody's spending more time socializing than they are riding. And it's just a place to belong. It's a very dichotomous community, because we're hyper social off the bike. You get on the bike and you're entirely alone. You're inside your helmet and it's quiet in there, and you can't talk to any of the 200 bikes in front of you or behind you for an hour or however long it is you're riding. And you get to your destination, and everybody's built up so much stuff to say from being stuck in their helmet for an hour by themselves that it's like a cacophony of birds on a wire. Everybody's drinking back tons of coffee and chatting away and being social again, and then bang, you're on your own again on the bike. So it's a very strange social experience, but it's a special thing. And that fanaticism, it extends to the brands. Whether you're a lover of MV Agusta or Yamaha or Ducati or whatever the brand is you love, everybody's looking for how to make their brand and their motorcycle a unique expression of them. People dress up their motorbikes way more than they ever dress up cars to look 100%. One of a kind.
100%. And that's the whole thing, is that it can be individualized in that way. That's what's so exciting about this. Do you have any dream partnerships that you'd like to share, maybe for the future, of like what Damon is doing? Do you see any champions in particular that you were like, it'd be really cool if we got this person to be on board with us, or what have you? Can you share any of that? Because I imagine that's part of the marketing process as well.
We've got some pretty exciting ambassadors coming up that you're going to be hearing about.
Also can't share it. I get it, man.
I can't share it. No, I can't. I can't take away their fame and their added shine that they're going to bring to Damon. So, but there's going to be some pretty exciting partnerships with some ambassadors. We're working on some exciting partnerships with some other brands that are going to be really, really powerful to the the extension of Damon and of their brand as well. So yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff in the works that you'll be hearing about over the months and years ahead. But yeah, I can't announce anything here today, unfortunately.
No worries.
Keep your eyes out on Damon Motorcycles.
I was going to say, when I ask those questions, it really is to bring the point home that people have to keep in mind, you have a career history in extreme sports. You know what I mean? You have a career history in major contracts. The things that you've done and where you've decided to come to today, it's all the reason people should be following you on every channel they possibly can to find out where things are going, because that really is the implication behind this conversation today. And that's I'm going to leave it at that. So now that we've said that, I do want to roll out the red carpet. Is there anywhere in particular, a channel or a website, that you'd want people who are listening to go and visit? Yeah, well, we don't get a lot of traction on Twitter for some reason, but we're on Twitter at Damon Motorcycle. Instagram is definitely our number one channel. I mean, we've seen 74% of all of our orders have been generated off of Instagram. So Damon Motorcycles on Instagram, DAMON Motorcycles. Of course, you can hit our website and check out the product and get a feel for it, and tell us if you like it. And I'm at Giraud. And do you do test drives or anything like that for anything, as so people can see what it looks like, what it feels like?
Yeah, so you can go to the website and I think on the Instagram page, you can sign up for a test ride and get on the waiting list for test ride. And then you'll be on the newsletter list for the tour. And we'll be announcing to those people first actually, we'll be announcing to the people who have an order first. You can place an order for a Damon bike with $100 deposit and hold your place in line. It's a totally refundable, $100 deposit so that you got a spot in line in the production line as we roll out that information. And we'll be rolling out information about test rides, probably up and down the west and east coasts of USA first. All of our orders seem to really aggregate in California, Florida, Texas. So that's where we have the bulk of our reservation holders, as you can probably imagine. So check those out, and you can get notified that way.
That's exciting stuff, man. I'm not surprised. I'm very happy for you and the team as a whole. I imagine, as a leader, knowing that you're bringing along a team, that it just feels great to come to the office every day or to meet up through, if you're doing remote work or what have you at the company. There's probably just this incredible morale going on about what's happening. Are you happy and excited for the team as well?
Oh God, yeah. And we've got 50 some odd people, the bulk of them in Vancouver, Canada, and a chunk down in San Rafael, California. And we do our battery development in California. All of our finished vehicle testing happens in California. You can probably understand why. Roads are dry compared to Vancouver. And then we've got some people in Germany, France, Colombia. Yeah, some remote workers as well. But yeah, not everybody's a motorcycle rider in the company. Probably half, which is actually a very, very high percentage. Probably half of them are motorcycle riders. And those that aren't just love what we're doing. They love the mission. They love that it gives them a sense of purpose. I think that pushes our people harder than anything else. People join Damon because they feel like they're really part of the future. And I know maybe that sounds trite or cheesy, but it's absolutely alive and real within every one of our employees who just really love that they're creating something that matters. Because, almost everybody I've met knows somebody that's been injured or killed on a motorbike. And motorcycles are here to stay. They outnumber drivers around the world. They're not going anywhere. It's an economic necessity for 16 megacities worldwide. And many other places, they use them for A to B, even if it's not an economic necessity. And so we've just got to make them better. We got to make them safer. We got to make them cleaner. And everybody really relates to that. So it's a powerful motivator for sure.
Again, I can't stress enough for people to look you up on all the social channels. Let's get your Twitter popping. Anybody who's listening, let's jump on there and make that happen. And IG, it makes total sense. It's one of those visual mediums, and
totally,
I've seen enough motorcycle videos to know why it's happening. And again, Damon.com is one of the easiest ways you can check it out. And Jay Giraud, man, I can't thank you enough for stopping by. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Right on. Thanks so much, Philip.